had always trusted my home, every corner familiar, every shadow comforting. But that morning stepping inside felt wrong. The air colder, quieter, like the house itself was holding its breath. The front door clicked shut behind me harder than usual. My pulse quickened. Across the room a faint shadow flickered past the curtains, too quick to be casual. My heart thumped. Something was off. The first sharp clue hit me instantly. My teacup, the one I used every morning, was no longer in its usual spot. The subtle perfume in the air, sweet and foreign, made my stomach tighten. My daughter-in-law moved through the hall, whispering into her phone, avoiding my gaze. A drawer she always locked was left slightly ajar, a flash of hurried secrecy. My mind clenched on a single question. What were they hiding, and why did it feel like I was no longer welcome? Fear wrapped around me, but it was tangled with shock and a sting of betrayal. These weren't small mistakes or accidents. Something deliberate was happening. The photograph on the side table, normally upright, now faced the floor. A soft whisper floated from the hallway, and my son, busy in another room, avoided meeting my eyes. Each subtle sign landed like a cold tap on my shoulder, urging me to pay attention. I hesitated, wondering if I should confront them, but a small, quiet voice inside warned me. Confrontation too soon might destroy my chance to uncover the truth. I needed a plan, a way to watch without tipping them off. And then my mind locked onto a solution. I would pretend to travel to visit my father. That way I could watch from a distance, unnoticed, and finally see what they were up to. My pulse quickened at the idea. Fear mixed with anticipation. Could I really pull this off? I had no choice. My intuition screamed that if I didn't, I might never know the truth. As I moved to prepare, a soft tap on my shoulder startled me. It was Mrs. Ahmed, our elderly neighbor. She glanced around nervously as if afraid someone was listening and whispered, "I've seen odd things lately. Wait until midnight. You will see everything." My breath caught. A chill ran down my spine. Could I really uncover what they were hiding tonight? What had I stepped into? Every step I took to pack my bag, every glance I cast at the rooms I loved, carried the weight of suspicion, fear, and growing determination. The house felt smaller, every familiar object now a sign of secrets. I would uncover the truth tonight. Whatever it took, I would know what my son and daughter-in-law were planning, and why they seemed determined to push me out. The house seemed familiar, yet every corner whispered unease. I stepped lightly through the hallway, noticing details that hadn't been there before. A folded envelope tucked into the edge of a drawer, a coat draped oddly over the chair, and a faint scent of unfamiliar cologne lingering in the living room. My son laughed quietly at something his wife said, but the tone was clipped, the laughter sharp like a practiced echo. I froze for a heartbeat. Something was off, more than small shifts. My sanctuary felt alien. I remembered the afternoon when my daughter-in-law had insisted I let her cook alone, brushing off my offer. Usually I would have joined her. Normally the kitchen smelled of home-cooked warmth. Now it felt sterile, tense. A tiny pang of sadness hit me. Could I be imagining the danger? I recalled the day my son had gently reassured me about an appointment at my doctor's office, yet his eyes had avoided mine, a quick glance away that lingered longer than usual. Subtle but unmistakable. Deciding to act cautiously, I quietly moved through the rooms, careful not to disturb anything. My hand brushed over a stack of unopened letters on the counter. Letters I hadn't seen before. One peek revealed hastily scribbled names I didn't recognize. My pulse skipped, a quiet alarm sounding in the pit of my stomach. Each movement, each small anomaly became a signal. This was more than simple forgetfulness or mismanagement. Someone was hiding something and I was being edged out. I paused in the living room, glancing at a family photograph, my fingers grazing the frame. The memory of my son as a child, laughter spilling from these walls, contrasted sharply with the hushed tones and secretive gestures I now witnessed. Fear mingled with sorrow and determination. I needed clarity, and confronting them now might only push the truth further out of reach. A careful plan began to form. I would pretend to leave town, a simple visit to my father, and observe from a distance. This was my only chance to uncover what they were hiding without alerting them. Just as I rehearsed my departure in my mind, a gentle tap on my shoulder startled me. Mrs. Ahmed, our neighbor, peered around nervously, her eyes scanning the house. She leaned closer and whispered, "I've noticed unusual things. Wait until midnight. You will see everything." Her words trembled with urgency, and for a moment my chest tightened. How long had she been watching? How much did she know? I nodded subtly, masking my curiosity, and thanked her. The clock seemed to crawl toward midnight, each tick a reminder that tonight could reveal everything, and that the stakes were higher than I had imagined. I retreated to the porch, pretending to adjust my bag, my mind racing. Every flicker of shadow behind the curtains, every abrupt step inside, became a clue. A heartbeat in the story I was desperate to understand. This night could change everything. My trust, my family, my home. And as the sky darkened, I braced myself, knowing that the truth I would uncover would be worth the fear. I had tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe I was imagining the coldness in the air, the strange quiet, the way my son avoided my gaze. But when I reached the living room that evening, something undeniable hit me. The photograph on the mantel, the one of my late husband and our son as a boy, had been turned face down. My chest tightened not from superstition but from the realization. Someone was rewriting my world piece by piece without me even knowing. I froze. Every creak of the floorboard felt louder than it should. The lock on my small drawer, the one with letters and keepsakes I had collected for decades, was slightly misaligned. Not forced, just subtly changed. My hands hovered over it, shaking, remembering that this drawer held more than paper. It held memories, moments that defined my life in this house. And now, someone had tried to block me from them even for a fraction of a second. A whisper floated from upstairs. My name carried on a voice that was too quiet, too cautious to be fully heard. My heart leapt. I hadn't called out. No one had. And yet there it was, my name. The house felt smaller suddenly, constricting, like the walls themselves were warning me. I realized then what I feared most wasn't just a lost photograph or a blocked drawer. It was losing my home, my place in my family, my sense of belonging. I stepped toward the hallway, forcing myself to stay calm. That's when I saw her, Mrs. Ahmed, my elderly neighbor who had watched this street longer than anyone. She stood in the shadows, peering from behind the lace curtain, her eyes sharp and worried. She didn't speak immediately. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, trembling ever so slightly. Then she whispered, low and urgent, "Tonight you must be careful. They are planning something. Wait and watch. It will change everything." Her words didn't give answers, only more questions. My pulse quickened, but a spark of clarity hit me. I needed to know what they were hiding. I moved silently back to the kitchen, my mind racing. I noticed a note slipped casually onto the counter. The handwriting was mine, or so it seemed. But something was off. The loops in the letters, the pressure of the pen, the flow of the words, they didn't match my usual rhythm. Someone had faked it. My stomach sank. Why? Why would someone pretend to be me in my own home? The fear that I had been systematically erased from the life I built pressed on me. I thought of my son, of the late dinners and quiet conversations that had once made this house a home. I remembered the gentle way he had smiled at me when I first moved in, the warmth that had slowly vanished under the weight of new rules, new distance, and new secrets. And now tonight everything pointed to a moment where I might be completely locked out. Not just physically, but from my family's heart. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't confront them, not yet. Too many eyes, too many risks. I would need to act, to watch, to uncover the truth without revealing my knowledge. I would pretend to leave, just as I had hinted in passing about visiting my father. It was the only way to see the truth for myself, to stand hidden while the night revealed their intentions. I paused at the front door, listening. The house seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the street lamps flickered, casting long shadows. Inside, whispers and quiet shuffles carried through the hallways. And somewhere in the distance, the clock ticked closer to midnight. I clenched my fists, telling myself to stay calm. Every second would count. Every movement, every sound, every shadow might give away the secret they were desperate to hide. Midnight approached. My heart thrummed in sync with the clock. And as the hands inched closer to the final hour, I reminded myself of the one truth that kept me steady. I may be hidden, I may be alone in this knowledge for now, but I was not powerless. Tonight I would see everything. I hadn't planned on witnessing anything. My suitcase sat half-packed, a careful ruse to visit my father, but the house already felt unfamiliar. A faint clang upstairs made me freeze. The lingering aroma of tea mixed with something sharp, almost antiseptic. My pulse jumped. Something was off. Amir moved quietly toward the study, glancing back to ensure I wasn't following. Shabana clutched papers to her chest, her lips barely moving. They whispered, low enough that even the walls seemed to strain to listen. Before midnight. She can't see this yet. Everything must be hidden. I pressed against the doorway, letting the shadow of the wall hide me. My stomach sank when I spotted the envelope on the counter. My handwriting, yet all wrong. The letters stretched in ways I didn't write. Someone had forged it. I gasped softly, catching myself immediately. Then a sudden sound. The floorboard creaked. Mrs. Ahmed's figure appeared briefly in the doorway outside, framed by the porch light. She didn't speak at first, only watched, her eyes dark, scanning the windows. When she finally whispered, it was low, measured. "Midnight brings what they've been hiding. Watch and don't look away." Her presence was brief, yet enough to anchor me. I exhaled slowly, letting my gaze return to the study. Amir had opened the ledger, placing it under the lamp. Each page contained my name, my signature, yet falsified, lined with transactions I hadn't authorized. Numbers gleamed in the soft yellow light. My heart lurched. The weight of their plan hit me fully. They were erasing me from my own home. I stepped back, letting the shock settle just long enough to plan. Memories of shifted cups, sideways photographs, hushed whispers, they now formed a pattern. Clarity edged in, though a flicker of fear lingered. I needed to vanish, pretend I'd left, and observe silently. But first, I had to understand the full scope of their deceit. The clock ticked closer to midnight. Each whisper, each shuffle of paper, each careful glance became a drumbeat, counting down. Shadows lengthened across the polished floor. My eyes flicked to a chair sliding back, then a drawer half open. My stomach twisted. Something new, something I hadn't noticed before. A key detail that hadn't been moved before now. The room seemed alive with secrets. I crouched low, watching their movements, and realized one thing they hadn't counted on. My patience, my observation. They had meticulously prepared every detail but overlooked the one person who remembered, noticed, and would act. I could see now how everything fit. The subtle cues, the whispered phrases, the forged papers. The truth waiting at midnight wasn't just about discovery. It was about them underestimating me. A sudden knock upstairs made me flinch. My breath caught. A tiny, almost imperceptible creak of the study door as someone checked the hallway. My pulse raced. Midnight was coming, and the house seemed to hold its breath with me. The clock edged closer to midnight. Silence hung heavy, punctuated by the soft creak of the floor beneath my careful steps. I hugged the shadows along the hall, each movement deliberate, senses sharpened by years of noticing what others overlook. Through the slightly ajar study door, I saw Amir leaning over the ledger, Shabana's fingers trembling as she flipped a page. "Before she sees," Shabana whispered. My stomach tightened. There it was, my signature, forged and paired with sums that made my pulse quicken. They weren't just planning to push me out, they were trying to erase me. I held my breath, eyes scanning every detail. The ledger, the papers scattered on the desk, the subtle way Shabana avoided his gaze. Fear burned briefly, then clarity took over. I would act, but quietly. They had no idea I had tracked every small hint, every shifted object, every whispered plan. A soft brush against my shoulder made me jump. Mrs. Ahmed appeared, face partially in shadow, whispering, "Be patient and watch closely." She melted back into the darkness, leaving a chill reminder that I wasn't alone. I crouched near the doorway, careful to stay hidden. Amir murmured again, "She mustn't know until midnight." My eyes followed every subtle motion, Shabana's trembling, the ledger open, the whispered scheme laid bare. At the stroke of midnight I moved. Each step was quiet, deliberate. Moonlight caught the edges of documents, letters, and small trinkets as I collected them. The papers rustled faintly, floorboards groaned softly under my careful weight, and a shadow shifted. Amir's head snapping toward me for a split second. I froze, letting my calmness speak louder than words. Arranging the evidence outside, I paused to touch the familiar teacup, inhaling the warmth from the fireplace, letting the small comforts ground me. Shabana's gasp drifted through the still air. Amir's face was pale, shock spreading slowly. They had underestimated me completely. I exhaled, hands steady, a faint smile brushing my lips. My home, my voice, my dignity, they were mine again. Not through confrontation but through patient, careful observation. The papers now lay like a map of truth, proof that the life I had built could not be erased. Yet, in the corner of the hallway, a letter sat unopened, edges peeking from a drawer slightly ajar. A faint sound above, a floorboard creak, hinted that the night's revelations weren't entirely over. I felt a shiver, knowing that while victory was mine, the house still held secrets waiting to surface. The house was quiet, yet it carried the echoes of the night's events. Every corner felt alive, whispering that patience, careful attention, and quiet courage leave their mark. I walked slowly through the familiar rooms, fingers brushing the rim of my teacup. Its warmth grounded me. The worn rug underfoot, the faint scent of old paper, the distant bark of a dog. Each detail reminded me that home is made of small, enduring moments. I thought of my son. That morning his eyes had met mine. A flash of confusion, hesitation, and unspoken guilt. He paused before speaking, and in that silence, I saw the weight of realization. Relief mingled with sadness, but pride rose stronger. Courage and vigilance had carried me through. I paused by the window. The cool night air brushed my face, carrying the scent of old wood and a faint rustle of papers settling nearby. Shadows stretched and shifted across the walls. A faint creak from the hallway made me glance up. A half-seen movement, a whisper of uncertainty, but I did not flinch. My grip tightened on the teacup, letting its warmth anchor me. Life always holds challenges. Small mysteries. People testing boundaries. I had faced fear, betrayal, and uncertainty. Now, calm and strength filled the space between those moments. The contrast was vivid. The tension of the night had passed. My home, my dignity, my life remained intact. I carefully placed the last papers in order, letting the moonlight catch the edges. Memories returned not as distant ghosts, but as living, tangible pieces of my story. I straightened the photo on the mantel, inhaled the faint scent of the night mingling with the fireplace, and let a slow exhale release the weight of vigilance. Finally, I performed a small, grounding gesture. I closed the window, placed the teacup back on its saucer, adjusted the photo frame. The house felt settled, not just with silence, but with the certainty of reclaimed dignity. I smiled softly, embracing the calm, ready to face tomorrow with quiet strength. My story, my choices, my home belong solely to me.